It wasn't on their threat board. No code name, no satellite tag, just another export jet, not worth a second look. Chinese analysts saw the specs and laughed. No stealth, no teeth, not even a match for our drones. But then, one morning over the East China Sea, a U.S. airborne warning and control system, a flying command post, lit up, not from enemy radar, not from missiles, from something else. A jet that wasn't supposed to be there, flying closer, lower, faster than anything they expected. And what happened next left one of the most advanced surveillance planes in the world completely exposed. Officially, it wasn't listed, not on threat reports, not on airspace control briefs, not even on the Chinese Ministry of Defense's internal next-gen observation list. Just another second-rate airframe from a country not taken seriously in aerospace circles. Visually impressive, unstable in real conditions, not a strategic concern. Those were the exact words used during an off-record PLA Air Force intel briefing. China's Eastern Command had seen flyover footage. The jet slicing air at a regional expo, flanked by 2 trainers and a crew in unbranded uniforms. They called it marketing. Let the cameras chase it. A senior Chinese colonel smirked. Our radars won't. And with that, the case was closed. Until 6 weeks later, when the jet wasn't in front of cameras. It was behind an American AWACS. At 36,000 feet, just off the East China Sea, a U.S. airborne warning and control system, one of the most sensitive surveillance planes in existence, was on a routine path. The AWACS is no ordinary aircraft. It's the eye above the storm, able to track targets hundreds of miles out, coordinate fighter wings, and guide intercept missions in real time. Its dome-shaped radar spun like a crown. Its crew of 19 monitored screens, waveforms, and transponder lists with mechanical precision. They were mid-shift, rotating through shifts of eyes-on glass, data streaming in across 5 sectors of open sea. Then it blinked. Not once. Not a malfunction. Not a hack. A blip, unregistered, untagged, moving fast, directly beneath the AWACS. Sir, we just had a ghost track. The mission commander raised an eyebrow. False echo? No. Low signature. But it's real. Matching speed. Altitude fluctuating, now rising. 15 seconds later, the entire left wing shook. A shadow sliced beneath the AWACS like a scalpel through air. No sound. Just motion. Fast, deliberate, close. Too close. Inside the cockpit, 2 pilots instinctively checked their controls. But the skies were clear. No radar warning. No lock. Just an unknown fighter jet now visible out the left window, climbing, banking, and settling into a perfect offset trail formation beside the AWACS. Visual contact. Non-NATO platform. Unknown livery. Repeat, unknown aircraft pacing us. In the surveillance bay, the intel techs were already replaying sensor feeds. This wasn't a weather balloon. This wasn't a drone. This was manned, powered, agile, and it wasn't on any IFF registry. How the hell did it get this close? No radar bounce until it was already beneath us. I think it came in under our dome arc, low sea skim, then rose inside the null zone. That should have been impossible. That area was supposed to be sealed, blind spot or not. It was miles wide. But the jet didn't just enter it. It danced through it. Outside, the jet tilted slightly, showing off the edges of its swept-forward wings. It wasn't a standard Western design. Not Chinese either. Something hybrid, fluid in motion, steady in turbulence. It drifted just close enough to make a point, then dropped away again, diving back under the AWACS, gone from visual, then radar, in under 4 seconds. Lost it. Where'd it go? It's under us again. No, wait. Right side now. This time, the jet emerged on the right, looping up into a spiral before crossing behind the tail, maintaining perfect distance without ever breaking a single warning protocol. No lock, no interference. Just motion, precision, intent. That's not harassment. A mission officer muttered. That's a performance. In Beijing, the Chinese Air Force's surveillance hub, began receiving scrambled traffic from regional monitoring stations. One station reported radar noise around a U.S. AWACS. Another noted a signal spike inconsistent with known Chinese units. They didn't realize the jet wasn't theirs, and it wasn't American. It was something they had ignored. And now, it was dancing around the most advanced surveillance aircraft in the Western arsenal like a shadow with no leash. Back on board the AWACS, one crew member spoke into his headset. "Are we being buzzed by a hostile?" The commander shook his head. No weapons deployed. No jamming. No provocation. Then, after a long pause, he added, "But it sure knows we're here." The jet rose one final time, above the AWACS this time, and rolled gently over the top before accelerating away at a steep angle toward open sea. Its afterburner flare lasted just seconds, but its message lasted longer. In that quiet void above East Asia, one truth became clear. This wasn't a dogfight. It was a reminder, the kind that said, "You may not have noticed me, but now you won't forget me." And while U.S. analysts rewound the feed, someone else had already taken note. Back in Beijing, one general leaned forward in his chair, watching the blurred footage from a coastal drone station, and whispered, "Give me every frame of that jet. I want to know where it was made. Because if it wasn't American, and it wasn't Chinese, then the skies just got a whole lot more interesting." The AWACS returned to base 3 hours later. The mission technically completed, but no one cared about the flight plan anymore. Everyone on that plane had witnessed something no radar was supposed to miss. As the aircraft touched down, the crew didn't speak much. They didn't need to. They knew what they'd seen, and they also knew this wasn't going to be explained in a press release or a debrief folder marked routine. This was going to black file level. At the regional command center in Guam, intelligence officers from multiple divisions gathered behind locked doors. A recording of the incident had already been forwarded up the chain. 6 angles, 3 radar sweeps, 2 thermal signatures, 1 visual confirmation. The silhouette of the unidentified jet doing controlled arc around one of the U.S. military's most critical airborne platforms. The lead analyst played the clip again, pausing mid-roll. Who the hell has flight control like that, without setting off a single protocol? No one answered, because there wasn't supposed to be an answer. Meanwhile, 7,000 miles away, in a secure drone control bunker outside Qingdao, China's military command reviewed the same moment, only from a different perspective. They had picked up noise on their regional grid, an unexpected radar flicker near the U.S. AWACS, followed by brief EM anomalies. Initially, they thought it was American stealth movement, until a playback technician zoomed in on a telemetry feed from a nearby high-altitude drone. And there it was, a still-frame image of the jet, faint, but visible, and definitely not American. Run through the database. A Chinese intelligence officer ordered. The result? No match. Not J-10, not JF-17, not MiG, not Dassault, not even Israeli. It was other, and that's when the call went out. Get me the full telemetry and visual grid from that sector. I want everything that flew within 100 kilometers of that AWACS. The general stepped forward. Whoever built that aircraft has told both of us, the U.S. and China, that they're watching. In Washington, the Pentagon's 9th Air Intel Division flagged the incident for urgent escalation. A document titled Unverified Aerial Proximity, Class 4 Encounter, was compiled. Within it, 3 possible origin theories were proposed. Experimental NATO platform gone rogue. Unauthorized Allied tech test using Ghost IFF. Non-aligned nation operating a black airframe. But one line stood out, written in bold near the top. If not ours, there's whose? That question echoed in the halls of both nations' military complexes. If it wasn't American, and it wasn't Chinese, then someone, somewhere, had quietly developed a jet capable of bypassing detection, matching top-tier stealth patterns, and maneuvering with enough precision to fly formation with an airborne command post, without ever being invited. But that wasn't the part that made generals nervous. What made them nervous was the footage that came next. In a grainy heat map recording from a Chinese surface radar balloon drifting over coastal Hainan Island, the jet was captured again, briefly. But this time, it was waiting, holding altitude, near stationary in high winds, its engines running minimal heat signature. And then, a signal burst, a tight, directional data spike like a digital whisper. Not intercepted, not jammed, just seen. What is that? A tech asked in Mandarin. The officer leaned forward. That's a handshake. A what? A coded pattern, low frequency. Military handshake protocol. One-way ping. No response required. Sent to who? Not us. Meanwhile, back at the U.S. Cyber Command, similar anomalies were picked up by satellite-linked listening posts. No coordinates. Just a pattern, like a ripple through digital air. And that was a moment both sides realized something they hadn't wanted to admit. This wasn't just a jet. It was a message carrier, a ghost platform, a testbed, a demonstration of presence. But presence for who? And then, like smoke on water, it vanished again. No more sightings. No military footprint. No comms chatter. Just one jet, one moment, two superpowers, and the uncomfortable realization that neither of them had controlled the sky that day. Red triangle pointed down cliffhanger, ending plus CTA for Chapter 2. The AWACS crew was debriefed, then rotated off active duty. Their report? Classified. Their story? Buried. But miles below that encounter, the message was already spreading quietly, through encrypted lines, through defense circles, through shadow networks. Because someone had built something worth noticing, and then flew it straight past the eyes that swore they'd see everything. We think this was a secret ally, a third power, or something bigger. Comment your theory, and stay with the Yes Stories. 3 weeks after the AWACS incident, while the U.S. and China quietly scoured their skies, Europe was already one step ahead. They hadn't witnessed the encounter. They hadn't been involved in the airspace, but they had heard the whispers. In Brussels, at a closed NATO coordination summit, someone brought it up unofficially, not in the agenda, not in the minutes, but in the hallway, between coffee and closed-door security clearances. Have you seen the footage? The French officer said it first. The German liaison responded with glance. The Italian delegate smiled faintly and said, "We've had glimpses." They weren't supposed to know about the jet, but intelligence travels faster than missiles when the world feels unstable. What none of them expected, however, was what came next, because on a remote Norwegian airstrip, something landed, and someone was watching. The location was near Tromsø, a NATO-adjacent cold-weather airfield used mostly for endurance testing, Arctic drone training, and occasional scientific drops. That morning, an unscheduled airframe entered the upper NORAD grid from the north. It didn't squawk NATO codes. It didn't ping civilian traffic control. But it didn't hide, either. It flew clean, fast, precise, and nearly silent before touching down at the edge of the runway. Within 90 seconds, the radar signal went dark. No ground crew approached. No tower contacted. And by the time Norwegian officials checked satellite data, the plane had already been wheeled into an unused hangar marked Weather Research, decommissioned. Inside the hangar, a low-level technician from a nearby NATO operations post, who had been tracking anomalies in flight behavior, used a civilian vehicle to approach the site on his own authority. He had no clearance, no orders, just an encrypted photograph he'd seen on a leaked Chinese thread. And when he got close enough to peek through the cracked panel doors, his breath stopped. There it was. Not a drone, not a mock-up. The jet, the same silhouette from the AWACS radar, the same airframe that had vanished from 3 national radars. Now just sitting there, covered in ice, silent, power down, waiting. He reached for his phone, took one frame. Just one. That's all he had time for. Because the moment he clicked, a soft hum broke the silence. Not from the jet, from behind him. A voice. Calm, non-aggressive, but firm. You didn't see anything. The man turned. 2 individuals, neither in NATO uniform, stood by a black SUV with no plates. One held a cold-weather clipboard. The other didn't move. He simply stared. "Turn around," the first man said. "Go home. This is above you." The technician hesitated. "Who are you with? Is that an Allied craft?" The man smiled. "It's not from an enemy." "Then whose is it?" "Not yours. Not mine. But it's here for a reason." And that's when it clicked. They weren't guarding a plane. They were protecting a message. Back in Brussels, the photo leaked. It was low-res, blurred by mist, but unmistakable. Within 24 hours, the internal EU defense network logged the file as potential 5TH plus Gen non-NATO airframe, undisclosed origin. The file was stamped with a yellow flag. Curious, do not escalate. That was the quietest way Europe could say, "We see it, but we won't be the first to speak." But someone did speak, and they weren't from NATO or the East. They were from a non-aligned Gulf state, where money flowed faster than policy. An advisor from their Ministry of Defense posted, then quickly deleted a cryptic line on a private security channel. "The sky has new colors. One day you'll ask who painted them." The message was deleted, but not before it was screenshotted and analyzed in Washington, Beijing, Paris, and Tel Aviv. The AWACS incident was no longer isolated. Now it was part of a pattern, a whisper moving through radars, hangars, and encrypted meetings. And still, no one could say who built it, who flew it, or why it was so good at showing up just long enough to be remembered, but never enough to be claimed. In the end, the technician who saw it in Norway was reassigned. Quietly, he no longer worked in aviation. His phone? Confiscated. But before he left, he wrote a note to himself, one the public would never see. It didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a warning to everyone. And somewhere, in a hangar not marked on any map, the jet still waits, because the next time it appears, it may not be alone. They called an anomaly, a ghost, a blip, a one-time encounter. But on the third day of the Baltic Shield exercise, it returned, not to attack, not to hide, but to be seen. The Baltic Shield drill was one of the largest joint exercises of the year. 14 nations, 80 aircraft, and over a dozen advanced drone systems testing real-time coordination, strike simulation, and EW countermeasures. The skies over the Baltic Sea were alive with activity. Raptors, Typhoons, Gripens, EW drones, and surveillance planes moving in coordinated waves. And then something changed. At 13:17 hours, a formation of 3 U.S. F-16s flying high cover over the simulated conflict zone picked up something unusual. A return ping, faint, shifting, and unlisted. It wasn't jamming. It wasn't cloaked. It was just there. The AWACS team aboard a NATO E-3 called it first. "We got a slow mover at 52,000 feet. No ID, no transponder, holding pattern." The feed was projected onto every live control room across 3 countries. They expected a Russian drone, maybe a malfunction. What they saw instead was the jet, still untagged, still silent, just hovering over the most active air drill in the region like a silent referee. "We didn't invite it. It's not interfering." Then what the hell is it doing? No one had an answer, because what happened next no one saw coming. At 13:22 hours, a swarm of NATO test drones was released from a Swedish carrier craft, part of the exercise's EW scenario. The drones activated their standard frequency jammers, performed a simulated attack sweep, and began cycling through predefined recon loops. Then, mid-cycle, they stopped, not all at once, but in sequence. 1, then 2, then 4. Within 40 seconds, 12 drones froze mid-pattern. Not falling, not crashing, just holding. Then, one by one, they began descending safely, returning to their launch point as if rebooted. No damage, no override, no interference detected, just a full recall as if instructed. Across multiple NATO command rooms, alarms were silent, but minds were racing. No virus, no remote interference. Then what the hell made them stand down? That's when the comms officer pointed to the untagged jet. It didn't break formation, but it pulsed once. Pulsed, a short burst, non-aggressive frequency, like a soft handshake. To who? To everything. It hadn't attacked. It hadn't jammed. It had signaled. And the machines, without being hacked, had listened. That wasn't warfare. That was dominion. At 1326, the jet banked right, climbed slightly, and winked out, not with a flare, not with speed, just a clean exit into cloud cover, disappearing from radar in less than 3 seconds. Again, across Europe, North America, and East Asia, footage was reviewed. Some saw threat, some saw promise. Everyone saw power. But no one, not the U.S., not China, not NATO, had claimed the jet, which meant one thing. It either belonged to someone no one expected, or it belonged to no one at all. In a confidential memo leaked weeks later, a line from a European defense consultant read, "What we witnessed was not an aircraft testing its capabilities, but a system testing our reactions." In an underground briefing room, a NATO strategist marked a new category on their next-gen threat board: aerial sovereign entity, not allied, not hostile, strategic unknown. And in an untagged hangar, somewhere beyond allied eyes, the jet sat again, canopy closed, its emblem now clearly visible on the tail. A ring of black lines with one golden mark pointing north. No flag, no nation, just presence. They said it wasn't worth noticing, but it didn't need to attack. It didn't need to fire. It only needed to move in a world full of weapons trying to be heard. And in doing so, it said more than any missile ever could. What do you think the message was? A test? A warning? Or an invitation? Comment your theory and subscribe to AS Stories, because sometimes the most powerful force in the sky is the one that doesn't speak at all.